Hi there, it's Kevin with the Rogue Market here with this week's episode of the Market Monday Recap, where I recap the popular series that I do over at my main channel, the Rogue Deck Builder, called Market Monday. This week we talked about the week 1 or week 0 finishes of War of the Spark. MTG already has its week 0 results for the 5-0 decks, and we got to see the cards that are currently seeing play from War of the Spark. So this is going to be my top 10 list of cards that I think are undervalued in War of the Spark. Now, a little bit of disclaimer, when I say undervalued, I'm not saying that these necessarily would go up in their current value. We're still at week 0, meaning there isn't a lot of supply in existence at the moment. When the big supply comes next week, or actually it's going to start rolling in here for Thursday, Friday, where the mass box openers can start cracking the packs, I think that the entire set is going to go down in value. And I think even these cards that are quote unquote undervalued comparatively to their other cards in the set will also go down, and then we might see them start to go back up after that initial wave of a booster box opening is complete. So currently War of the Spark has a box value of around $120 a booster box, and that's even using market price, which is just phenomenal for a standard set. So we saw Ravnica Allegiance around that 110, 115. Dominaria had like over 100, and Guilds of Ravnica as well had over 100. So War of the Sparks is significantly higher than even those sets for box EV, and something has to give when that is the case. So again, this is a top 10 list of cards that, comparatively speaking, if you compare it to other cards of similar price from War of the Spark and rarity, that I think these are undervalued compared to those cards. So let's start off with my number 10. My number 10 is Oath of Kaya. Oath of Kaya saw a significant amount of play in some Esper lists, as well as some Black-White Knight lists, or Planeswalker or Super Friend, Gideon type decks. And I think that this card is here to stay. It is, at worst, it's kind of like a sorcery speed lightning helix. The damage can be done to any target, which is very, very unique for a white-black card. Usually it is creature or planeswalker, but being able to do to any target, I think, is quite significant for this card. It also protects your planeswalkers, or at least drains your opponent if they attack with creatures towards your planeswalkers. So this can be very good against aggressive decks to keep, at least have some sort of benefit for later on Teferi or Kaya that already exist in the battlefield. And these are fine in multiples. It's an enchantment, which means you can blink it and bring it back into play with the other Teferi card, or other ways that can do that, or recur enchantments. And I think that it is very flexible throughout many decks that just run black-white. I think you can justify putting this in. So currently it's going for only $1, and I think this is very undervalued for a card that could potentially see as high as 2, 3, 4 copies in a mainstream deck. I think Esper's going to want to run 2, and then post-rotation, if Esper still exists, it could be a full playset with some of the other cards that currently are gaining them a life, like the Vraska's Contempts rotating out. All right, so on to my number 9. My number 9 is a long-term spec. This is Finale of Revelation. Every one of these cards sees a significant amount of play in Commander. With this pre-selling, or now after week 0 down to $3, we could actually start to see this card go up in value regardless of the boxes being cracked like crazy, because these cards do see play. If you look at Amonkhet, one of the most played cards out of Amonkhet is Pull from the Eternities, or whatever the X spell draw X cards is. Very similar to that card. I think that this has an even bigger upside in EDH, with giving you no maximum hand size, as well as untapping 5 lands if you do have XP 10 or more. So it's going to allow you to draw those 10 cards, as well as at least cast something with 5 mana and have no maximum hand size. This is exactly what EDH wants. Draw spells are very popular. Any X draw spell has value, and a $3 mythic I think is undervalued at the moment. Again, this is going to take some time for this card to go up, but if you can find this card, if it continues to crash, you can see that market price is around $2.50, so there's already a 50 cents difference between mid and market price. If this goes down below the 2, or even down below the $1.50, I think that'll be the right time to pick these cards up. It is a mythic, so keep that in mind. Comparatively to rares, mythics hold a significant more value long term and have the ability to spike up a lot quicker. So I like this card for that reason. On to my number 8. My number 8 is Nahab Dreadhorde Champion. Now, this one could go down to bulk price. If it does go down to bulk price, this is where I definitely think you should pick these up. I have a hard time seeing that this card will not see play sometime within its standard life. It has some very, very relevant abilities with trample 5/4 for 4 mana. I think when the Phoenix rotates, this could be the go-to 4-drop slot for most of the red decks that want to curve to 4. It's going to be very tough to have a card that's printed that is more impactful in those type of decks than Nahab. Nahab already works with the other Dreadhorde, Arcanist, for filling up your graveyard for targets. But the good thing about Nahab is it does exactly what Experimental Frenzy or Risk Factor does. It helps you get rid of those excess lands from your deck, so then you can start pitching them and drawing cards and even adding mana. So it doesn't have haste, it does have trample. There are ways to give it haste in standard, and like I said, in sets to come, if we have any sort of graveyard recursion theme or flashback or madness, or again anything that works with discarding cards, then I think the Nahab Dreadhorde Champion is just going to be an all-star. It's also a card that doesn't mind being played of as 4-ofs, because one Nahab can pitch another Nahab. One of the problems with playing multiple legendary creatures is if you have 2 of them in your hand, it ends up being kind of a non-bow is what we like to call it. So if you remember with going back to like Aether Revolt with the pirate, the monkey pirate, or even from the other pirate out of Rivals of Ixalan, the one that creates the treasures, those always felt bad when you got stuck with multiples in your hand. Nahab gets around that. So again, I don't like the price point at the moment. I think it's going to continue to go down in value, and I think that's the time to pick up the Nahab Dreadhorde Champions. On to the next one. This is Enter the God Eternal. This has actually already gone up since I did my Market Monday video, up to about the $2.25 market price range. Enter the God Eternals, I think it's better when Ravenous Chupacabra and Hostage Taker rotate out of the format. Both of those, I think you can make the argument of playing over Enter the God Eternals, but once those two rotate, this is going to be your remove a creature and get value out of removing that creature. I mean, that's exactly what Hostage Taker and Ravenous Chupacabra. Chupacabra leaves back a 2/2. Hostage Taker allows you to cast it if you then have the mana. This is going to do 4 damage and gain 4 life, and then amass 4. So again, it's exactly what Esper needs to stabilize versus those aggressive decks. It hits a lot of significant targets right now, like Phoenix or like the Drakes in the format, and I think it's undervalued compared to its counterparts. On to the next one. This is Soren, Vengeful Bloodlord. This is another card that saw a significant amount of play. Creatures and planeswalkers you control have lifelink, and it'll deal 1 damage to target player or planeswalker, gain you a life. And then it does have that ability to return a creature card with current mana cost X from your graveyard to the battlefield. So it's going to get some value off of those, like the 1-drops and 2-drops. Currently, that's kind of what a Johnny's doing, and it does have a very significant +2 ability that then can allow you to continue. So it's almost like every other turn, you're going to be able to return a 2-drop back with no problem of the Soren's loyalty going down too low. So again, it saw a significant amount of play over the weekend. And if you, well, two decks at least saw play with it. One was an Aristocrats deck, and one I think was just like a Planeswalker Good Stuff deck. And I think that this is a card that has a lot of potential with just a lot of card advantage and stabilization that this card can get short-term and long-term. Can actually even be a finisher in those type of Aristocrats types deck where you just continue to bring back a roadblock or some sort of ETB effect and then drain a damage, then rinse and repeat. Yeah, it does do it to player or planeswalker, so yep, it can go to the face. All right, on to the next one. This is where it starts to get good. Narset's Reversal. I think that it's only a matter of time before this card gets adopted into Legacy and Modern. Again, we don't have those results up yet, but this is where I think it definitely will shine. It has seen play in sideboards as well as in the main of the decks in the 5/0 finishes. You copy target instant sorcery spell, and then that basically counters it because it will return it to their hand. So you got to think of the remand, very very similar to like a remand effect, but then you get to copy that spell. So in like Modern, you get to copy like a Lightning Bolt or a Path to Exile. A lot of times there will be something relevant for you to copy with Narset's Reversal. Yes, they'll get to cast it again next turn, but if you've ever played with remand, you know just how backbreaking that is to set them back a turn, or maybe the next turn they won't have a relevant target for it. I think that this is an undervalued card. I think it's going to even see play in EDH. I think it'll be a fun, flavorful card in EDH. And I mean, stealing people's big spells because you can choose new targets for that spell. And I believe if you copy an instant sorcery spell without targets, you are the control of the copy, so you will get the benefit of particular sorceries like draw spells, I believe. Yeah, I think that's how it works. So correct me if I'm wrong. I might be overvaluing the Narset's Reversal, but having this card, a 2-drop basically counterspell C play in standard week 1 is a good sign for the card's longevity. Again, the price point's a little bit weird, but comparatively to other cards that are like $4, $5, $6 that saw as much play over the weekend, this one is undervalued. Yes, it still will go down with the set, but that will probably be the time to pick it up. All right, on to the next one, which is Finale of Eternity. Finale of Eternity is another mythic. I think this is an undervalued card as well, as this destroying something with toughness 1 or less for 3, and then 2 2-drops, or I think it starts getting pretty good the more you put into it, and can definitely be tailored. Like it just curves well throughout the entire game, and so far it's not seeing play. I think it's just a matter of time before a deck adopts it, and I might be overvaluing this, but again, this is another card I'd let hit bottom because it probably still... In fact, this is less encouraging because of week 1. Week 1, it did not see any play. And so when this does bottom out, which it should bottom out, we're talking about like the 75-cent mark. That's probably the pickup time for Finale of Eternity. So I think I have these swapped. This was supposed to be up here. This is Finale of Revelation slot at the number 4. To my number 3, this is Sark on the Master List. This saw a ton of play over the weekend in various decks, like I guess it's showcased in 2 decks. I thought it was in 3 decks that I looked at, but it is in a couple mono red decks as well as a Gruul deck. And Sark on the Master List is a pretty good 5 where you kind of have the high end of the curve of the either Gruul midrange or the what we call the big red. And I think it was a 4 of in the Gruul midrange deck, and it was a 2 of in the big red deck. And it's just a 4/4 haster basically. So no, it doesn't gain haste, right? So in a turn, each planeswalker you control becomes a 4/4. Yeah, so it puts out a 4/4 dragon the first turn that it comes down, 4/4 flying dragon, which then if they attack in with a creature, it will dish 1 damage to that creature, so it can protect against tokens. And then after that, you can start turning Sark on as well as other planeswalkers into 4/4 dragons. So the upside of this card is quite big. It has some nice curves with like Karn and Chandra at the moment. And I think that going forward, and Domri too, there's a lot of planeswalkers in the Gruul archetype that can match up well with Sarkon. I think that comparatively to other cards that saw a 4 of in one deck and a 2 of in other decks, the price point was quite low for Sark on the Master List. All right, on to number 2. This is Commence the Endgame. This actually saw a lot of play in various blue decks, and the thing I like about Commence the Endgame is it feels very similar to Torrential Gearhulk. It's a 6 mana instant speed, can't be countered, and you draw 2 cards and amass X, where X is the number of cards in your hand. So an instant speed blocker, which will probably be something like 4/4 or 5/5 or 6/6. I mean, at that point with a control deck, you're going to have at least 4 cards in your hand, so it's most likely going to be a 6/6 when it comes out. And like I said, this is Torrential Gearhulk all over again, and we saw how much play that card saw. Less versatile, of course. It can't copy a lot of other spells, but you get the big body back and drawing 2 cards. And most of the time with Torrential Gearhulk, you were hitting like a divination type card. And so I think this is very underrated and will start being adopted in many more blue decks. On to my number 1. This is Chandra, Fire Artisan. This one saw a lot of play in the various red decks. This goes quite well with like Experimental Frenzy to be able to get cards off the top of your library for Experimental Frenzy. Treasure Red, if you remember that, or Big Red, used to run Karn, and I think Chandra is just that much better in a Treasure Red or Big Red type strategy. So you get to exile the top card of your library and play it this turn, so you can actually hit lands off of that. And whenever 1 or more loyalty counters are removed from Chandra, it deals that much damage to target opponent or planeswalker. So it's at least going to do 4 damage to your opponent if they are going to kill it via damage. So yes, there are some spells that can kill it without damage where Chandra won't do the damage. But then if you can get it up to the -7, which if you are in a big red and removing things, this can do 7 damage to your opponent when it ultimates, as well as exiling the top 7 cards of the library, and you may play them this turn. So that is definitely going to be a finisher. You just need to tick up, tick up, tick up, ult, and then win the game, which is exactly what big red decks want to do. I'm thinking we're going to see some Jeskai decks again, running Chandra and Teferi as the finishers, as both of those cards do exactly what the Jeskai control deck wants to do. And yeah, I think this is here to stay as one of the best cards out of War of the Spark. Again, it saw a lot of play over the 2 decks is a lot of play comparatively, because there's only 1 deck can be showcased from the 5.0 finishes, as the way that they release the MTGO 5.0 finishes, it has to be unique enough. It has to have enough different cards. And having 4 ofs in, I believe, both of these decks, as well as the other tournament they showcased, is a good sign for Chandra Fire Artisan. So having this be, a lot less than many other rares out of War of the Spark is something that makes me scratch my head, because this, I think, was the clear winner over the weekend. Anyway, those are my top 10 lists of cards I think are undervalued. Again, disclaimer, I don't think that these will necessarily go up. I would still allow the entire set to go down in value and then reevaluate these price points of these cards then, and then decide if they are going to be sleepers or not. Typically, I never give the advice to buy cards on week 1. Yeah, there are some instances where there will be the Arclight Phoenixes where people just are undervaluing a card. I don't really see a lot of those sleepers in this format because everything is just overhyped. But we'll continue to look at the set, see if any of these cards bottom out, and reevaluate from time to time and see if we can pick another one that will be a sleeper. Hope you enjoyed this list. Be sure to check out my other channel over at Rogue Deck Builder for our weekly Market Monday videos. And as always, happy hunting and happy speculating.